I'm Chris Jones, your host. Welcome to the Art and Business of Writing podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I am your host, Chris Jones. Today we're going to be talking with Jake Heilbrunn. He is the author of Off the Beaten Trail, an inspirational memoir about his journey leaving college and solo backpacking through Central America at 18 with no phone or knowledge of Spanish. He has reached thousands of people through his blog posts, inspirational videos, and motivational talks at high schools. Jake has been featured in Psychology Today, Thought Catalog, the San Diego Union Tribune, and various other sites. He is dedicated to empowering people to live a life of purpose through listening to their inner voice, heeding their intuition, and taking action. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Chris. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, man, great to have you on. So let's talk about this backpacking adventure you went on.
Yeah, man. So about 2 years ago, I was a freshman I started my freshman year at Ohio State University. I was really excited, and unfortunately, I broke out in hives all over my body like 3 days after arriving, and almost the whole semester I was waking up every day with these rashes and hives. I didn't know why. I saw doctors. I had all the different tests, and they basically diagnosed me with chronic urticaria, which is just a fancy name for saying your skin's freaking out, and we don't know why. so it's just a nice name for that. But the blessing and all that, and I became really anxious and unhappy, and I realized that I was just kind of living a life not true to myself based on others' expectations. I had never even questioned my path, and my skin condition was sort of a physical manifestation of the disconnect I was feeling within. And my true passion and the thing that called out to me was to explore different ways of life. So the second semester, I took a leap of faith. I left school, did some research, and I found an opportunity to teach English and soccer and volunteer in this local town in rural Guatemala in the north. And so after coming home 2 months later, I hopped on a one-way flight to Guatemala with a backpack, no phone, no knowledge of Spanish, and just to pursue this dream. And I brought a journal with me because I had the idea of potentially writing a book. And throughout the journey, it progressed into a mission about halfway through when I realized that the book had to be written.
Dude, that's awesome. It's something I want to get with you here is I want to make sure anyone who is listening from Columbus, man, he didn't mean to say Ohio State. He meant to say the Ohio State University. The Ohio State University. So make sure no one in Columbus comes to find you in San Diego.
Well, Buckeyes are everywhere, so I know. I'm sure they'll find me.
They'll find you and get you. It's the. So you left Ohio State. What were your parents' thoughts on that? When did you graduate first? Did you leave, kind of between years, or how'd that work?
Yeah, so I left after my first semester. My parents were aware that I was really unhappy, like not in the best mental state. And I did really well. Like I made the dean's list. I was doing everything kind of expected of me, but I was just really miserable. And I told them, they were first happy to know that I was kind of coming home to get my skin condition under control and just to figure out, what was going on. So they were supportive in the sense that they were just happy to know I was coming home. But I told them I've always kind of been self-reliant in the sense that they never checked my grades or anything. Like I just always took care of it. And so I told them I was going to go on this trip, and I really wanted to do it, and I was paying for it and all that stuff. So they were supportive. Once they found out more of the details, they were, I think, a little nervous, but they also trusted me, which I'm pretty lucky about. And I got home from the trip about 16 months ago in July of 2015, and I started writing the book, working on it almost the next day. I got a job. My parents saw that I was motivated. Like I got a job working in a restaurant right when I got home, and I would work on my book during the mornings and work in the restaurant during the evenings. I did that for about 10 months. And then did a couple other little jobs in between. And then finally, last Wednesday, I published the book. So that was kind of my plan and still is my plan. And they've been really supportive of my dream because they see how hard I'm working every day.
Right. So, you realized, after taking the trip that you wanted to write down and document your experiences. Why did you feel the need that, putting it in a book and giving it to people was the best way to do that?
Well, for me, during the time I was at college, I felt really unfulfilled and I felt sort of trapped. Taking the leap of faith to leave school was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And for me, understanding the statistics, like, so I sometimes speak at high schools, and a thing I draw on is mental health stuff, because there are a ridiculous, like, millions of kids who are experiencing anxiety and depression, and 8 out of 10 adults hate their job according to the Deloitte Index survey. And to me, this is crazy. Like, it speaks to a problem that people are pursuing things they don't like, and they're unfulfilled as a result. But the statistics show a problem, but what offers a solution? And for me, I think the power of a story, a well-written story articulating, your low moments, your fears, your anxieties, diving into that, and then the experiences I learned traveling, just the lessons. I think that my story is just a metaphor for leaving an unfulfilling path and paving a new one. And if I could elaborate and tell my story, it will give someone else the strength to leave an unfulfilling path and write their own story.
Ooh, love that. That's powerful. Now tell me, like, what were some of the things that you did, that you saw, or that you experienced backpacking through Central America that inspired the project?
Yeah, so I had an experience about 2 months in. I'd heard of this sabio, which is known as a wise man in Spanish, named Arnulfo. And I didn't know too much about him, other than I knew that his family had a restaurant in this town, and he had this, like, apparent profound insight into humanity. And so I found him, and we talked for a couple hours, just really hitting it off. And he invited me to come with him the next day to this rural, remote village on the other side of the mountain. I was staying in sort of a touristy town where a lot of travelers would stay, and he said there's no travelers over here. A lot of the kids are orphans. A lot of them I found sleeping in coffee plants, and he went over there multiple times a week to help, and he would give them money to buy food. And so I went with him, and that day I was just blown away. I had brought stickers with me on my travels to give out to kids, and to see the reaction of these kids from stickers, like, they kind of, when you approach them, they look at you. They weren't, like, happy or sad. They just looked at me kind of, like, unemotionally, almost like stoic. And then the stickers just created such a joy, and it blew me away almost every single time. And I just remember getting back to the motorbike when we went to drive back to our town, and I thought, like, wow, like, I have so much potential within me, and that we all have within ourselves, to make a difference, even if it's just something as small as a sticker. And I started thinking about how else I could be making a difference, also back home in my own country. And that afternoon, a couple friends invited me to this ceremony with a cacao shaman who was, like, apparently world renowned. And I thought, what the heck, right? Like, I'm traveling, open-minded, new experiences. And during the ceremony, the guy leading it, by the way, looked like this, like, guy straight out of The Hobbit, right? Like a 6'6" skinny looking Dumbledore guy with long white hair. But he was actually a really smart guy, and he guided us through this meditation. And I had this visualization where I saw, this was 16 or 17 months ago, I saw in my vision me standing on a stage speaking, and the MC introducing me holding a book that I wrote. And it was very vivid. Like, I was wearing a white shirt. It was like, it's just unbelievably vivid picture. And I knew in that moment that I was going to write the book, because my experience that day with Arnulfo and the kids and the stickers, and the experiences that I'd had the previous 2 months traveling, made me understand that this book had to be written. It was no longer an idea. It was a mission. And literally last week, I spoke at my book launch party in front of, like, about 100 people wearing a white T-shirt. Of course, I intentionally wore that because I read that part from my book. But it was really something for me that I had to write.
Wow, I love that. You said it was no longer an idea, but a mission.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I felt a real strong sense of purpose to write it.
Yeah, and so, the idea of intuition, like you get to in your book, going from, idea to mission. For people who have that on their heart to write something, what do you have to say? Like, what kind of advice or encouragement do you have for people who feel it and need to do it?
I think that's the first step, is feeling it. And I remember it felt so real to me. Like, when I took the time to zone in and feel that and envision it, like, I just wanted it so badly. It felt so real to me. And so I think that's the first step, because that's like that motivation. It creates that, like, structural tension where your body wants to realize that vision because it feels so real. So once you have that, then you have to think about the end result. And for me, that was, publishing the book. And once you kind of understand the rough idea of what you want to do, then you can kind of reverse engineer a game plan. So first you have to write the book, and then editing and all that stuff. So the first thing I did after I came home was started researching it and actually writing the book. doing a little mind mapping before I wrote it. So I mind mapped each chapter, the different events that I had, and the themes for each chapter. Mind mapping was a really good organizational technique for me. And then I just dove into the writing. Like I would write, I had this kind of crazy routine. I would wake up, and I still do this today. I take a cold shower right away, and I write in my gratitude journal. And then I would do a 10-minute mindfulness meditation, which I'm not doing right away in my mornings, but I was doing that during the writing period. And then I would make tea or coffee, and I would just start writing, and I would take a break after about an hour, stretch, kind of take 10 minutes, and then I would get back to it, and then I would go work out, and then come back to it again. So I'd write about 4 hours every morning, and that was kind of maxed out my ability to write what you could say isn't garbage. And then, after about 3 months, I had written 106,000 words, and I had the initial draft of my manuscript, which was clearly too long, but I had to start trimming it down. But I think it's, for anyone listening, just kind of figuring out, the process and writing it down really roughly. Like, it doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to have every step of the way, but okay, you need to write it, then outsource editing. And there's tons of great resources online. If you just Google search like the process, and then you start by writing it, and then you research editors and hiring an editor, and then you can learn about book design. But really just taking the first step, because once you begin, you build that motivation and the mindset to continue and keep going, and then it carries into the next step and then the next step.
Love it. Now let's talk about mind mapping. I want you to describe the process that you use to mind map your book, just so that those who are listening, who want to write books, can get a feel for how mind mapping works. Go for it.
Yeah, and it's funny. So my book is a memoir, so it's a story. And so mind mapping probably would be even more helpful for anyone writing a nonfiction. Well, my book is nonfiction, but like a more of a how-to type book, or just a book on a nonfiction topic, because it helps you organize your thoughts and what you want to get out. So essentially you start with the main theme, or the main name for that chapter. You draw a circle on a page in the center, and you write that idea down, or the main topic of that chapter, and then you just keep drawing lines out like a web, and you keep writing ideas, and then you circle them, and then you can write an idea from that one. So it creates this web of all the important ideas and topics and themes that you wish to cover in each chapter. And when you can do that for each chapter, so you have 10 chapters, you might have 100 different ideas, and 10 ideas for one chapter, 8 for the next, 7 for the next. And it gives you that idea of, okay, you're making sure you're covering all of the information that and that can provide value, and into those different little chapters. And it's great because once you get one idea in your mind mapping, you draw the next web from that idea, and it can spark more and more ideas. So it's a really great way to just kind of get everything on the paper, just out of your head onto paper, and then you can work from there to organize and cut things out down the line.
Dude, that's fantastic. Great approach. Yeah, no, mind mapping is definitely helpful. A method I like to use is I tend to scrum it all up. I'll get a bunch of Post-it notes and slap those all over the wall and organize
I love that.
every idea on the wall, and then I can categorize them all under each Post-it note, So there's so many great ways to get things out of your mind. But yeah, I love that concept of the web, the mind mapping with the circles, and then putting it all together to organize your writing workflow. That's good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a fun process too. I mean, That's one of the most fun process. Like, you're getting out all the ideas, and that's fun.
Oh no, it is. It's probably one of the most fun parts before you actually have to do the real work.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, speaking of the real work, so you said you were writing about 4 hours a day. You were writing around your job. So when you were writing, because you were so focused, were you cutting things out of your life just to make time for writing? Because I know for a lot of people who want to write, there's always that struggle of, man, there's this favorite show that I've got on television, there's stuff I want to do, friends want to hang out, and you found 4 hours a day to write. How did that work for you?
Yeah, well, kind of like the law of sacrifice is everything you do, you have to give up something else. Everyone is doing that on a daily basis, whether they're aware of what they're giving up or not. And for me, I definitely was sort of out of balance in many ways. I'm a very social person, but I was living back home, which I still am now. And really, I just kind of went into this mode where I didn't have the biggest social life. It was a lot of writing, and then I would go to work in the afternoon, and then I wouldn't get home till later at night. But I really cut out TV. I didn't really watch any TV. I became a really avid reader traveling. I used to hate reading, which is kind of funny, but I just became obsessed with learning. And so I would read a lot, but I think it's just all about prioritizing your time and scheduling it. So what I would do, it's like before I even went to bed that night, I would visualize and kind of like know what my next day looked like. So when I heard my alarm go off in the morning, like I'm flying out of bed because I know what I need to accomplish the next day. And for me, having like going to bed, either writing it down or just knowing in your head what the next morning's going to look like was really powerful for me because it helps you schedule your day. And by scheduling your day, you can make the most use of your time. Even if you only have an hour to write, at least you'll maximize that hour and have that creative output because you're mentally ready once you wake up.
Ooh. Now you said something that I think we need to bring to the forefront once again: the concept of visualization. You talked about it before when you felt the need to write the book where you saw the vision of yourself on the stage. And you talked about visualizing the next day's work. How does visualization play into keeping momentum going when you need to write?
Well, it's funny because I guess I've been using visualization, and I was totally unaware of how the process worked. Like I used it traveling, and that was what guided me. And then I picked up a book called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, and I learned all about the process of visualization and how it works. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've already been sort of doing this, but it's really effective because I think it's important to understand like it is a journey, and it's going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight. For me, the book took about 16 months from the time I started writing it to publishing it. But having that visualization of goals, so something I visualized giving my book to a lot of people I really looked up to, including Chris Guillebeau, Jack Canfield, John Assaraf, Drew Brees, and I got it to a lot of those guys, and I didn't get yeses to all of them, but I would kind of affirm, I would say I'm so happy and grateful that Jack Canfield wrote this glowing endorsement. And I'll just give you an example. I actually received an endorsement from him on my book launch day, which was incredible. But just to give the listeners a little hindsight into how that worked, I would write down like I'm so happy and grateful to meet Jack, and I would visualize like what it was like meeting Jack and giving him my book and like receiving that email from him. And then one day when you're visualizing it, it shifts your reticular activating system in your brain to like zone out, so like, or to focus and find those aspects that you're looking for. So if you need a new tire, you're all of a sudden going to start seeing advertisements and car part things driving, and it's not because they weren't there previously, but it's now you're focused on it. And it's the same thing with the visualization process. So I saw this event pop up in my Facebook news feed back in March of 2016, and it said, one day to greatness in LA with Jack Canfield. So I, without hesitating, bought a ticket. I didn't have a car. It was in LA. I had to figure out how to get there. I'm in San Diego, so not too far. But I was so committed to it. I knew I'd figure out how. Made it up to the event in June. Waited after 8 hours, the event, and then another 3 hours to be the last one in line to give Jack my book. And I gave it to him just like I had imagined so many times. He said, congrats, like no guarantees he'd be able to read it because he gets so many of those requests. And then 5 months later, last week, I get this email from him with the endorsement, and it blew me away. But it's how that whole process of visualization works. And, that manifestation period from March was when I clicked on the thing on Facebook. I was visualizing starting in January, February. So then it took from the time of visualization to now, which is like end of September, early October. It's a process, but when you plant the seeds and consistently do it and you make sure to take action, it's unbelievable what happens, because when you focus on what you want, you can create a game plan on how to get there, and visualization helps you get clear on what you want so you can take specific and guided action.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I love how you were very unconscious about it. Like, you saw the event, you bought the ticket. You didn't think too long. You knew that was a part of your plan already, and you made it happen. I mean, that's something I've been working on, something I've been actually coaching people on, is just being unconscious with their action. Just take, when you see an opportunity, you take it. It's kind of like I was watching, I'm a basketball fan, so I was watching Kobe Bryant that time he scored like the 81 against the Raptors.
Yeah.
And it was unconscious shooting. It's like Kobe's not thinking, I'm going to take a shot. He's grabbing the ball and he's saying, okay, I know where I am on the court. I'm in proximity to the basket. I'm going to shoot the basketball. And it's the same process. It's just, I know what I want. I'm in proximity to get it. I'm going to press the button. I'm just going to hit the button, put my card number in, and I'm going to go see Jack Canfield.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like when you are clear and you take the time to visualize what you want, it's like like you said, it almost becomes unconscious. Like you just trust your gut feeling because your mind, your subconscious is already aware of it from visualizing. So your actions just become automatic and geared towards the specific goals that you're focusing on.
Yeah. Now, are you self-published or are you published by a publishing house?
Yeah, I am self-published.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Now, let's talk about writing tools. What are some of the writing tools that you used as you were writing your book? 'Cause, I mean, if you were writing 4 hours, I'm sure you weren't doing it seated the entire time. I'm sure you probably wrote on the go and wherever you were. Did you have any tools that you liked writing with?
Well, it's funny. So, I mean, traveling, I wrote in my journal, but coming home, and of course, I reference back to the journal a lot. The book's not like a travel log, but I referenced those events because they were so clear and vivid because they happened right then and there. But I wrote most of the book, or all the book, I should say, on my computer and primarily through Microsoft Word. I actually wrote at home a lot because I didn't have too much money when I came back, so I didn't want to go even spending money on coffee every day. I was like, that's going to be taking away from money I could be using elsewhere. I got kind of like strict on that, but then as the months got on, I did start to write in coffee shops and outside. I found that changing environments for some odd reason, like changing your physical location, can be a nice like boost in creativity and help you like overcome roadblocks writing just for that change in atmosphere. But yeah, primarily just Microsoft Word and yeah, just typing it.
Nice, man. So what did you find that you absolutely loved about writing?
My favorite thing as a writer is just being able to articulate like vivid descriptions and complicated ideas into words where someone reads it and they just have that like aha moment, or they read it and just get absorbed. Like I love being able to describe that picture through words and bring someone there. That's just my favorite thing.
Oh, yeah. And what did you find that was, challenging or difficult about the writing process?
I think the hardest thing for me was, although it actually wasn't too difficult because I developed a really good routine, but it was really, I created a routine for myself where it made it easy to stay committed. Like I had that strict schedule that I was following almost every day, during the weekdays. And I found that kept me very accountable to continue with the work that I had paved out for myself. And I was averaging about 1,000 words a day. And of course, a lot of that's garbage. But the tough moments came, especially when I would hit like that mental block that all writers face, because we're just human. Like we're gonna have moments where we feel like we just can't write. And I remember I found this video on YouTube when I was searching like how to overcome writer's block. And I watched this one, and this guy said, writer's block is just your mind saying what I'm going to write is going to be complete garbage. So he says, allow yourself to write complete garbage. And so I would do that, and more often than not, what you're writing isn't complete garbage. Sometimes it's not of the highest quality, but just giving yourself permission to write garbage allows you to kind of overcome that block. And so there were days where I would just felt like, I was just not in the flow, and that wasn't normal. Sometimes even that writer's block trick wouldn't work, and that's okay. But just embracing that, okay, this is a marathon, not a sprint, and that the next day I'm going to go at it with full force, but kind of sticking to that commitment.
Yeah, no doubt. Every writer goes through that, and that's the right thing to do, is just to keep working your way through it. I also like to, when I get to those points where I'm kind of stuck, is just do something physical, whether it's exercise or cleaning your house or whatever it may be, but just doing something that's kind of a change of pace that's physical. It seems to always unblock me as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Movement, whether that's like you said, exercise or yoga or just moving around, those were cornerstones of my routine too, because I would find that coming back from I did yoga a lot, which I picked up traveling. I learned about it. Was really beneficial to me, and also running. Just the clarity, the peace of mind and clarity you get after a run, like the ideas start flowing in.
Oh, I know. I've gone running sometimes, and I have my my music in my phone, and I'll be running, and then all of a sudden the ideas start to kind of jam out of my head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to stop right then and there and jot stuff down in the middle of a run.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a great feeling. So on the business side, we've talked before, before the show, that writing is really 5% of the work and marketing is the other 95%. With your book in hand now, how are you promoting yourself and your work?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is speaking. So I've been speaking at high schools and different organizations. I'm speaking at a club at USC tonight, and I love being able to speak obviously that's not going to be the case for every writer, but I love that I could speak about the messages in my book and then sell books after. Also through Facebook ads. So I did a pretty heavy Facebook ad with a book. I did a Kickstarter campaign to help me fund the cost of self-publishing because, today with the means of self-publishing, you can make a high quality book if you do the due diligence and make sure to hire, good freelancers. So I did a Kickstarter campaign, and I had a friend help me create this pretty cool trailer about the book and my journey. So I I did a boost post and, targeted the audience. I targeted people who liked like Cheryl Strayed's Into the Wild and, people where my book might be relevant. My book's often kind of like the young dude version of that. But that was helpful in getting people interested, and then did a ton of guest posts. So I did guest posts in the Medium's The Mission. I did one. I did a post for Psychology Today. I just started trying to I pitched tons of newspapers. So I had my story featured in the San Diego Union Tribune and a couple other ones. And that's been huge because I had people come to my book launch party who I didn't even know. They just read about it in the paper and bought books. So really just understanding for me how PR worked. Like I didn't know anything about PR, and understanding that no one comes to you. You have to approach them and pitch it in a way where your message is exactly what they need, because the media needs stories. And so if you could fill the need that they need, it's a win-win for both of you guys.
That's awesome. Now we got 4 things that I want to cover that you said, and I'm going to go through each one of these. First, we talked about speaking. How did you approach speaking gigs? For the author who does want to jump into speaking gigs, who just got excited when you said that, what's the right way to broach that subject with places where you want to speak?
The beginning is practice. So I joined Toastmasters about a year ago, and I had never done a speaking gig. I joined in September of 2015, and I just started practicing. Every week I would go. I wouldn't speak every week, but they have like table topics, and if you have a Toastmasters in your community, that can be really helpful because it's just the practice of getting up in front of people and speaking. And then in March, I spoke at a high school, the high school I graduated from, in front of 2,000 students, and that was just a connection. So I think if you can kind of first get clear on what you're going to offer people. So what is your speaking topic? What is your expertise? And I remember hearing someone tell me that. I'm like, well, I'm not an expert. I'm like an 18, 19-year-old kid. But clearly, if you're writing a book, you know something about something. And if you can figure out what your theme is, what your topic is, and a couple bullet points, the one message you want people to come away with, then that's the first step. And then second is, reaching out to your community. There are people who want to help you. So if you can figure out who can help you connect with someone who has an event or has an organization you can speak at, even if it's 15 people. But, first, I think for me what was really helpful was practicing, and Toastmasters is a great affordable resource for that. And the second thing is writing down what you're going to offer, like what you can provide to specific audiences and figuring out your target audiences. And then the third is just reaching out to connections. And I reached out to my vice principal, and that was how I got my very first speaking gig.
Nice. Now with Kickstarter, we talked about that a little bit. One of the big things with Kickstarter, as many people know, is it's all or nothing. So that's why, you have people who try Indiegogo, some of the other places where you do get the flexibility of getting some of your funding. But with Kickstarter, it's all or nothing. How do you set the correct price for your project so that you do get the funding and offset some of the costs to publish your book?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be completely honest, it's a little bit like I did a rough calculation, but it was impossible to know like the exact amount. But I chose $6,000 because roughly editing cost me about $3,000, and I thought to print books and shipping them, and I did a couple other basic costs, it was going to cost me about $4,000 to $5,000. And the video production for my Kickstarter I paid $1,000 for, which seemed pretty hefty for me at the time, but now I could say it's 100% worth it because in all those campaigns, video right now is the thing. And so video was huge for getting people to get inspired about the project. But I did just that basic research for the $6,000, and I knew I could hit the $6,000. And the reason I went with Kickstarter is I knew that because it's all or nothing, I knew that I would do whatever it took to get to 6,000. Whereas if I did another platform and I knew I could get it, I would have been less prone to maybe pushing myself. That's just my own self-awareness about myself. And I found that that was a big motivating factor to just make sure I did everything I can. And another just thing that worked really well for me and what I'd heard in other crowdfunding campaigns is push really hard the first day. I actually raised half my funds the first day because I did a lot of launch prep, and I reached out to like everyone I knew. I got blocked by Facebook because they thought I was like a robot messaging people. But just going at the launch really strong, I found was really effective.
Ooh, that's awesome. I love that. Just motivated by the all or nothing approach. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. But yeah, no, there's a lot of value in that, what you said about video too, because I hear, video, I think it's what 158% of people react to video. Like you get a 100%, 158% bump up in terms of reaction and response by having video.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, I mean, especially as a writer, it can be frustrating. You're like, well, if people just read my stuff, but especially if you're promoting via social media, like there's so much content, so much noise, and one of the most powerful ways you can stick out is with a video, and hopefully an intriguing video. So I think it's just understanding like what needs to be done. Like it's kind of almost a game. It's like a system, and I didn't know anything about the game, but I once I understood the rules and how the system works, I knew that I needed a video to help me accomplish my goal. So I started researching about videos, and from a writer creative standpoint, it was fun to create the video because it's a creative process, right? You write the script, and so that was fun to me, and I think for a lot of other creatives, that aspect is fun too.
Absolutely. Now, for those listening in, Jake has said like at least 3 times, research, research, research. It always pays to do your homework with anything that you do to promote yourself. Always pays.
Yes, I would agree.
Now, you talked about Facebook ads, and I know a lot of people use Facebook ads and they just kind of drop the blanket Facebook ads. You said you targeted specific people. Talk about your return on doing that.
Yeah, well, to be completely honest, the first time I did a Facebook ad from a Kickstarter campaign, I didn't totally know what was doing it. And even to this day, I don't totally know what I'm doing. I'm very like right side of the brain, so like the analytics is sometimes hard for me to interpret. But on this most recent one, I realized that you can target age, demographic, and interest. So I'll give you some basic ones that I did for my book, which were relevant. I targeted Cheryl Strayed, which I mentioned. I targeted Into the Wild, the movie. I targeted Jack Canfield because my audience, I feel like, is a lot of his audience. I targeted spirituality because my book is also about like the soul-searching journey and spiritual aspects. So I targeted these specific interests where I thought people would find my book relevant. And I found that the engagement and a lot of the comments, and you can kind of track, you can set up an analytics on Google to track how many people see your video and actually buy your book. And so the engagement was really cool, and you can kind of test it beforehand, which I didn't do. But in the future, I'm going to be doing a couple like smaller tests, like only boosting it maybe $5-10 and doing kind of split testing, which I would recommend, which I didn't do. And that was actually advice I had received in the last week after my launch. But you live and learn.
Yeah, no, that's always a thing, and it's always fun to be able to try things again after you've learned them. Getting the advice and okay, well, I'll try it this way. Like you said, doing the split testing to see if one works better than the other or how they fare.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the last thing you talked about was guest posting. So
Yes.
how did you approach guest posting as a PR tool?
Yeah, so for me, blogging is something I love. I have a personal blog, and I understood that in order to get my message out there, I have to write for other people's stuff because that's the way they'll find me. And so I started doing, again, just research. Like I would read a lot of Huffington. I didn't actually get on the Huffington Post, but I would read I pitched a lot of Huffington Post people, but it's kind of like a numbers game. So I just would research people who were writing about topics that I thought I could write about. And I pitched people from Psychology Today to Huffington Post to the Medium to Workaway, which is a blog, and that's the volunteer side. I used to travel, and they had like 150,000 likes on Facebook. So I just sent basically generic, authentic pitches to these people. I made sure to customize it. I did my research on what maybe an article or two they wrote, and I said, hey, I really liked your article here. My name's Jake. Here's my story. Thanks so much for your time. Like I made sure to be respectful and said, I have 3 ideas for an article. Would you be interested in me doing a guest post? And honestly, almost every one of them replies, as long as if you take the time to like think about it from their perspective and respect their time and just be authentic, they're always going to respond. And most of them, that I got through to, they said, yeah. So then I basically wrote the article and I sent it to them, and they would say, yes, it's ready. No, you need to change a couple things. And I went through that process. And the cool thing is, like, once it goes live, there can be a lot of traffic and people will start coming to your site, checking out your book. And you also get new fans and new people who are going to start reading your work on an average, daily or weekly basis whenever you're pumping out content. So it's cool, and it's a great way to grow your own community, which, is something I'm still in the process of doing.
Right. Now, from our listeners, definitely take note. Know who you're pitching. That's something that I'm an editor by trade, so as an editor, that's something that's one of my peeves, man. Is just that it doesn't take much to find out someone's name. So it's not like dear editor, but like you went through the process of learning who these people were that you wanted to write for, looking at some of their work, and then commenting on it, and then putting your pitch, within that. And I think it's a winning strategy. Because it, like you said, it personalizes things. It kind of brings the bar down for you and gives you a better shot because you've made it so personal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's funny. Like, I don't know, because I didn't hire like a company to do my PR or anything. So like sometimes people would be like, "Wow, like, thank you for your message. It's so authentic." And I'm thinking to myself, like, what? I didn't even know any better. And of course now I've learned, like, these agencies will just send out generic pitches. So if you can, like you said, just even take the just time to write their name and make sure you spell it correctly, of course. That could even that sets you apart. And saying the name at the end again too, so they're like, oh, you didn't just like copy paste this. You're taking the time to write my name at the end too. So those are just little things that I think can go a long way.
Oh, I definitely agree. Now, as far as like your social media and how you're pushing it on social media, are you using any tools to help you out with that you can recommend to writers who want to broadcast across social media channels?
I was using this site called Hootsuite for a little while, where you can kind of schedule social media posts, and I found that I didn't totally love it. Like, for me, ideas are always coming to me, and I'm always posting stuff. But I found that I used Hootsuite for Twitter a lot because the average tweet, I think, has like 11 seconds of lifespan. So you got to be like, if you're going to utilize Twitter, and of course it's great to respond to people who are tweeting at you, but if you also want to just put out content, Hootsuite's great because you can pre-schedule tweets. But I found for me that most of my posts are not necessarily planned. They're mostly just kind of like, I'd usually do an Instagram post or a Facebook post, both of them at least once a day. And anything from pictures or videos that I've been creating myself, or just blog content, or just my thoughts on a particular topic. So Hootsuite's a great tool, but the way I've been using it primarily is kind of just naturally.
Cool. And you said you're creating videos yourself. Is it just regular videos, or do you have an app that you use to edit and create cool effects in your videos?
Yeah, so I bought a cheap tripod on Amazon, and I use my iPhone, and I just record my videos, and then I'll go on iMovie sometimes, and I'll just edit in, put a little background music in, and write a little call to action at the end. Nothing too fancy, but I think it's just the process of doing it. And I realized I didn't get too hung up on the quality of it because, like, as long as you're doing something and getting it out there, that's always the first step. And of course, your videos will improve over time as you continue to do it. But I don't even think it has to be too fancy at first. You can work on that later.
Oh no, I definitely agree, man. It's about getting the message out there. If there's something that people can take away, they'll listen. They always
Exactly.
do.
Yeah.
Now we're coming in for a landing here. Tell me about some authors or writers that you admire.
Jack Canfield's a big one for me. His book, The Success Principles, like I mentioned, just like really gave me that mental framework for understanding how to go at something and pursue a goal, and like how much is involved. Like, there's 64 principles in that book, and he's been a big influence in my life. Another author that I love is Malcolm Gladwell. I just love how we can bring together these stories and these statistics that seem to be so irrelevant and then tie them together to bring you that aha moment. I think that's a pretty special quality, which I love. And from a blogger standpoint, someone I really enjoy is Mark Manson. He's like an unconventional self-help blogger in the sense that he writes whatever he wants to say. He holds nothing back, and I think that's really a fun, likable quality as a reader. And I actually think his stuff is really beneficial and can help me think about my life in different ways. So those are just some writers that I really admire.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Gladwell too. Have you listened to his new podcast?
I haven't actually. Is it
Oh,
good?
it's fantastic. Revisionist History, fantastic. You'll love it.
I gotta check it out. Yeah. He's amazing.
Oh, totally. So what's your go-to book on writing, business, or professional development?
I kind of already answered that with The Success Principles, but there was another book I was reading. I can see if I have it here. It was basically like 50 tools to, oh yeah, I have it right here. It's called Writing Tools, 50 Essential Strategies for Every Writer by Roy Peter Clark. And for me, what I would do, this is one of the things I also did writing. Each morning before I wrote, I would read one of the tools. So there's 50 tools, and one of the tools will be like work from a plan. Another one would be reveal traits of a character. So there's these different things, and or place gold coins along a path. Like I'm just reading a couple of them right here. And essentially it's like, so each day I could kind of focus. It's like adding a tool to my belt, but not overdoing it by doing like 10 a day. And that was really helpful because I started thinking about, these different techniques and strategies that I could integrate into my own writing.
Love it. That's nice. Now, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received with regards to writing or business?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I think it comes down to just two words, which is just take action. And that's something that I'm really passionate about because, of course, I'm someone who does my research and homework, and I think that's actually really, really important. Like, you don't want to totally dive in like blind, but there comes a point where you're going to have to just understand that you're never going to be ready. I forget who told me this, but it really resonated with me. And just to start, because I started writing a book. I didn't know anything about it, but once you kind of dive in and start, I found for me that, once you take that first step, you see the second step and the third step, but you got to make sure to take the first step. So just to not get too hung up about all the blocks ahead and just dive in.
Love that. Yes. And lastly, how can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, so all my content and all my stuff is at jakeheilbrunn.com, which is HEILBRUNN, and that's kind of me all over. And the book Off the Beaten Trail is on Amazon, so you're more than welcome to check that stuff out. And yeah, that's basically the easiest way to find me.
Awesome. All right, guys, you have been with me and Jake Heilbrunn talking about books, writing, off the beaten trail, cool PR tips and tricks, and things that you can apply right away. Thanks for listening to The Art and Business of Writing. Jake, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's been
yeah, man. And best of luck on promoting your book.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, and we'll talk to you soon.